FantasyHolics everywhere. What is going on? I'm your man Mose Knows, and welcome to the show. I know you love that intro. That intro is blazing and amazing. We did it. I think it's awesome. I know you think it's awesome. I'm glad we got to put that together for you. Glad to be with you this evening. Welcome to the first episode of the strategy sessions. You know, we're in this time. The NFL is rolling. We're in the beginning of training camp. Things are moving hot and heavy real fast. And I think we're starting to come up on some redraft time. And we wanted to get together and give you guys some tips and pointers. You know, our motto is strategy, skill, and knowledge. And we're going to partake that onto you today. We have none other than FantasyHolics' very own Grimlock Warrior. What's going on with you, man? How you doing tonight?
Doing great, man. Doing great. Ready to do a mock, man. Always ready to do a mock.
Absolutely, man. So good to have you on. We are going to talk about your strategy, but before we get into that, let's take care of just some minor housekeeping. If you don't already follow FantasyHolics, you can give us a follow at FantasyHolics on Facebook, on Instagram. I didn't have it there because it might have, taken up too much space, but you can also find us on Twitter as well. Give us a follow on all of those social medias to be up to date on all the content that we're putting out as we're ramping up towards the start of the 2021 season. And as I said, we are beginning to bring you these strategy sessions. Tonight, our first strategy session is a strategy session brought to you by Grimlock Warrior called Teammates Unlocking Handcuffs. Can you give us a little bit of insight of why you went with this strategy, why you like this strategy? What about this particular strategy in a fantasy football draft sticks out to you?
Sure. Well, just a little background, like if everybody knows what a handcuff is, like, maybe you take Christian McCaffrey and, his handcuff this year looks like it would be Chuba Hubbard, the rookie running back, or last year you look at, Mike Davis was his primary handcuff. You can see the value in if you would have had Mike Davis backing him up there. But the way I look at this teammate strategy is a little more so, it's more guys that are less of handcuffs and more that have, some independent value in the not necessarily the earlier rounds, but more like mid-round guys. And the way I look at it is if you can kind of fill a hole in your roster while being able to load up on, this strategy is best with running backs, I find for sure, but receivers as well. If you can load up on your other positions and this one kind of fills a hole, this year personally, we'll get into the mock, but I feel like you got to have a top tier tight end if you can help it, or if it just doesn't work out that way, then get a top tier quarterback. But you need something to kind of make your team stand out. Waiting for quarterback forever. It's a deep position, so I get that, but tight end I feel like is one of the most important positions in fantasy because there's just so few. So if this strategy helps you load up on a top tier tight ends and quarterbacks, I think that's really beneficial to your team.
All right, let's take a look at some of the comments that we have here. We have Paul that says, pick a kicker first. Now, I think the only person that might do that is somebody who accepts a bet. I have heard of people, who are really, really good at fantasy, people betting if they can, win their fantasy football championship if they pick a kicker in the first round. I haven't heard of any success stories with that, Paul, so we'll have to get back to you on that. Ed Fingerhut says, love cuffs.
That's right, Ed.
And then Paul follows it up with kinky. I don't know what those fellas got going on in the comments, but let's talk a little bit more about this strategy with the teammates. And let's lean on your personal experience. How have you seen this strategy affect your fantasy football team? Where have you seen it going right? And where have you seen it going wrong?
Well, I'll just do a little bit of war stories here on my home league, my home redraft league. I've been in it since 2008. So, 13 years, I guess. And I've won it twice. And those two, very competitive league. And those 2 years, the years that I won, it was because I did this strategy. And it was that second player in this teammate strategy that paid off. The first year was Devonta Freeman. That first year he broke out, I took Tevin Coleman like 2 or 3 rounds before him, but I knew that I thought this was a better back, but I knew that I want somebody in a potentially potent offense, and that ended up paying off. That was my first championship in that league. And then the second time I won it was I took Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara his rookie year, and that was when Adrian Peterson was actually, I think I took Ingram a little bit before Peterson, but Peterson went either later that round or the next round, and I took Kamara with one of my last picks. And you see both those times, it's guys that kind of came out of nowhere that, and that's a little bit more, I would say, Coleman and Freeman, that's a little bit more of the mid-round guys, where Kamara was basically a flyer, a true handcuff in that scenario. But I just find that, if it's more the mid-round guys, that's where, you're kind of taking a stab. It could be this guy, it could be that guy. It's not as much of a handcuff, but you want to lock in that position. I mean, that won me 2 championships right there. So that would be some historic examples of it. But, every year there's these guys that, you never know who's going to go down. You never know, Marlon Mack goes down, and all of a sudden Nyheim Hines is super valuable. These guys. Now, what if maybe you don't get Jonathan Taylor, but you were able to get Marlon Mack and Nyheim Hines, and then boom, one of them ends up paying off. Stuff like that. You just never know how things are going to go. So.
Absolutely. Now, you said you've been in that league for 13 years. I would classify that as being a veteran in the fantasy football game. As a veteran, and imparting some of your wisdom on newer folks to fantasy football, what should, that new person in fantasy football, look for? And what are some of the signs you think that they should look for? Because it sounds like, in the instances that you mentioned, with the Falcons, and then what was the other team?
The Saints.
The Saints, yeah. Falcons and the Saints. You had the foresight to say, let me grab this guy just in case. To me, that sounds more of a veteran move. That somebody who's been playing fantasy football over and over would look to do from experience. For a newcomer, what would you foresight when it comes to this type of strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest things when you're going in a draft is, you have some kind of strategy, you have something in mind, you have the players you like, but you don't want to just sell out for one strategy, because you just never know how you got to let the draft come to you. I think that's really important. You got to see, if nobody's taking quarterback, I usually like to wait on quarterback, but if nobody's taking a quarterback and Patrick Mahomes has fallen way into the 3rd or the 4th, 5th round, like if nobody's taking quarterbacks, well, when you're that first person to take it, other guys are going to follow suit. So you got to kind of let the players come to you. And that would be the first thing. And usually, I mean, I've seen a draft, it's been a while, but I've seen a draft where a computer, an auto pick draft, that team is a championship caliber team. You got to watch ADP and stuff and kind of let the draft come to you, because that's what the computer is going to do. And there's a lot of luck involved in fantasy football. A lot of it is health. That's a huge part of it. But yeah, it just in general, it's let the draft come to you. You want to get your guy, but don't egregiously reach for guys. Take the best value.
Okay, I like the fact that you mentioned don't egregiously reach, and that's going to make me bring up this comment from Derek Clements. Thank you for your comment, Derek. Much appreciated. He says, is Kelce 4th overall too early? I know you mentioned earlier about getting a top-tier tight end, but is number 4 overall too early for a guy like Travis Kelce?
I don't think so. I think it's a hard set, McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook, and then after that, I mean, Kelce is just a difference maker. There's no getting around it. Now, I really like Darren Waller as well. So if you can afford to wait a round or two after, he's that next guy. But I think in general, no disrespect to George Kittle, I think George Kittle is an incredible player, but I also think they might spread the ball a little bit more than they have in the past. That's just my opinion with that. But But yeah, I mean, those are the big 3 tight ends. But I mean, I'm not against taking Kelsey top 5. I'm really not. I can't fault people. I would say, Kamara's been great, but that offense, there's a lot of questions. Derrick Henry's been great, but coming off a 2,000-yard season, there's a lot of most running backs lose a yard per carry after rushing for 2,000 yards. Like is he a different type of dude? Absolutely. But there's a lot of guys with questions. Kelsey doesn't have any questions. Kelsey is about as safe as it gets. So, I mean, I would consider him at 3. I really would. Depends on the league. You got to know who you're playing with. But in general, I think you can start considering Kelsey as soon as 3 overall.
Okay, like that. Sticking on the topic of tight ends, this is something that I hear going around a lot. You obviously have the big 3. I don't think 4 tight ends would go in a first round fantasy draft, but do you think it would be an egregious reach if somebody took, say, Kyle Pitts in the first round of a fantasy draft?
First round,
maybe not as high as 3 or 4, but maybe 10, 11, or 12 in the first round. You think that's too high?
Definitely. You got to see it happen first. I like Pitts. I go back and forth on whether that 4th tight end to me is Hawkinson or Pitts. I think Pitts has the most upside. I think Pitts is knocking on the door upside wise of being, worth that. But you just got to see it first as a rookie. He's got everything working against him just historically. But I'm good with Pitts to be the 4th tight end off the board. But it's a risky pick. Like it's an upside pick. If you're in a regular PPR league and safe wise, to me, Hawkinson has a much higher floor, but Pitts, they're not going to use him like a regular tight end. He's going to be funneled targets. Now, what's he going to do with them? We don't know. We got to see it, but I'm good with him being the 4th tight end off the board if you're feeling lucky, but I wouldn't look at him until 4th round at the earliest.
Okay. Good advice, guys. I hope you got your pens and your notepads out. You're taking some notes, jotting down this wisdom. It's going to help you in your drafts coming up later this month. So let's take a look. Let's dive in. We're going to continue on in this strategy. Let's just quickly dive in some of the examples that you've given. First, we're going to start with the Arizona Cardinals. Tell me why you like the combination of Chase Edmonds and James Conner.
Sure. And just a quick recap about when I wrote this article was just that it's helpful if you have picks that are going to be near each other if you're near the beginning or end of the snake draft, because you just have a better chance of snagging 2 of the same play, these 2 guys. But in general, I like the Cardinals backfield. I got kind of suckered in last to Kenyon Drake, but I used my teammate strategy to get Edmonds, and that ended up paying off as well. But I went too early on Drake, and I'm trying to learn that lesson from that. But the price of Chase Edmonds and James Conner is just tremendously cheaper than what these guys were last year. And this is an offense that they're known as an air raid, Kingsbury air raid type offense. They run a lot more 10 personnel, 4 receivers than anybody else in the league, but they like to run the ball. They really do. They a lot of plays, and they like to run the ball. So this is an offense. There should be a lot of carries. I don't think there's a ton of clarity at workhorse back in the past. So if these are guys you can kind of get in the mid rounds and pair together, starting off, I'd feel more comfortable with Edmonds. I think he's going to catch more passes, just get a little more work in general. But if Conner gets that goal line work, it should be a high scoring offense. That's just an offense I'm down to be a part of at a pretty cheap cost comparatively. So if you can step up and get, a top tier, you load up on your receivers, or, I wouldn't want these guys to be, locked in as necessarily have to have them as a running back too. I prefer them as a flex, but if you're trying to fill one of those running back slots, if you can lock up a backfield in a high powered offense like this, it makes a lot of sense to me. I feel like these are 2 guys I'm going to own a lot of.
Okay, sounds good. Let's move on to the next duo with a higher powered offense. I'm partial to this one. I think I'm going to have this duo in a lot of my leagues. 49ers running backs Raheem Mostert and Trey Sermon. Tell me why you like this duo here.
Sure. And when I first looked at it, it was when Mostert was I would say he was had the leg up, like the higher ADP, average draft position. But I would say nowadays people are on the Sermon train. But this is an offense that they've struggled with injuries. But if they're healthy, I mean, this offense should just cruise. And you got, Kyle Shanahan. Need I say more about the Shanahan running backs historically in that family? So, I mean, you've got Mostert. Whenever Mostert's been healthy, he's been super productive the last 2 years. Now, health is the key. He's explosive. Now, Sermon, it just makes sense. Like, he's waiting in the wings there. These are two guys, you want to be risky. They both have high upside. But, I just like having the both of them because they both could have value on their own. But if you have both of them, Mostert's been battling injuries. If Sermon becomes the guy, awesome. If Mostert stays healthy, I think he's going to be the guy to start for sure. So, and I know they kind of had last year, was it Jeff Wilson got a lot of goal line carries. He's out with injury right now. They like to use a lot of backs, but in a high scoring offense like that, they both could have value. Now the downside is none of the 49ers running backs have caught many passes the last few years, but the bottom line is they get a lot of carries and they should get a lot of touchdowns.
I think that's going to change this year with my direct knowledge of my 49ers. I think that's one of the things that Kyle Shanahan wanted to address in his running backs this offseason. And when you look at what Trey Sermon is able to do, and another name in our running back room that I think people should watch out for, and I wouldn't add him into a teammate or a handcuff strategy, but if you say, for example, Raheem Mostert does go down and you have Trey Sermon, but you still want that 49er handcuff, a name to watch out for is going to be Elijah Mitchell, the second rookie running back that we drafted this year. Word in camp is he's explosive. He reminds people a lot of Matt Breida, who used to be with the 49ers. But I think where Matt Breida had injuries because he was a smaller back, Elijah Mitchell is in camp. I think he's at either 210 or 215. So he's a smaller, compact back with a lot of muscle on him. His body can take the wear and tear, but he also has that same speed and that same explosiveness, and he can catch out of the backfield. So in the event that Raheem Mostert goes down, knock on wood, I don't want that to happen. If you do have Trey Sermon, Raheem Mostert goes down, look out for Elijah Mitchell on the waiver wire in your leagues. Next duo, Buffalo Bills. I actually like this duo, so I want to hear your thoughts on it. We have running backs Zach Moss and Devin Singletary. What do you like about this duo?
Well, for starters, they're cheap. They should be the last backfield to be drafted. So a lot of times you're not even drafting them to play like right away, maybe as a flex or something, but you don't have to spend high capital on these guys. You should be able to get them pretty cheap. Now I worry about their upside just because Josh Allen runs the ball so much in the red zone, but eventually you got to think they want to get away from that because they need to protect him. Like, he is their franchise. I think he's a big dude. He's powerfully strong, but you don't want your franchise taking a ton of hits. So it only makes sense that, and this is as much as they passed the ball last year, a pass heavy team like that, they're going to want to run the ball more than they did last year if they can help it. If their defense steps it up a little bit. So there might be what I concern about one of these guys is they get a lot of empty touches, between the 20s, but eventually I think one of these guys should stand out. To me, Moss has just a little more upside, but Singletary is a do-it-all guy too. So, I mean, either one of them, they're cheap to get. They're going to be probably within a round or two of each other, so you probably have to take them back-to-back. But this is a very late draft pick, two draft picks you'd be taking. And I will say, you mentioned Matt Breida. I saw that he signed there, and I'm a Breida truther. I've had him in my dynasty league. I think I had to cut him last year, but I had him for a long time, and that's a dude I liked. I'll be a Matt Breida truther till the day I'm gone. So if he's on the roster, I'm a little concerned, but you can incorporate him if you're in a deep league or something and you get one of them. That's a stash guy, if you have the bench space, or just a guy to keep an eye on, because that's a guy who his health has failed him several times, but he's an explosive back that that can do a lot of things.
Absolutely. Moving on from running backs, you also listed two groups of wide receivers that you feel fit this strategy. So let's first start with the Raiders with wide receivers Henry Ruggs and John Brown. How can this strategy be beneficial when it comes to wide receivers, in your opinion?
Well, big thing. These are some of the last picks in your draft too. Depending on how deep the league is, but you got to keep an eye out for camp. I know recently I was reading that Bryan Edwards was kind of ahead of John Brown on the just out there with the starters. So that's something to keep an eye on. And, Edwards was a rookie last year who showed some promise before getting banged up pretty early. But this is just an offense that, it's not always pretty with Derek Carr, but I think they're going to have some volume. I mean, they're just not good enough on the defensive side of the ball to not have to, sling the rock. And Nelson Aguilar, did really well last year, but that was a 1-year deal. He's gone. I mean, he was a target monster, and he had some huge weeks for fantasy. So if that's Ruggs that steps up, or if it's Brown, or it could be Edwards, I know Hunter Renfrow is still there, but Renfrow it's not a sexy pick. That's a PPR slot. Get what you can get out of them. But if you want guys with some upside, to me that would be. If Smokey Brown's still got anything left in the tank. But Ruggs, you got to think it's kind of like one of the big hypes for Josh Jacobs last year was there was whispers, the Raiders didn't want to seem like they wasted their pick the year before. He had a up and down rookie year. So they fed the hell out of Josh Jacobs, make themselves look better. Why would they not do that again with Ruggs when there's nobody standing out there? Obviously, Darren Waller is a beast, but there has to be, other guys step up. And to me, it makes sense. Ruggs, Brown, if Brown gets passed up, Bryan Edwards does have good potential. But just an offense, a lot of people aren't excited to get a piece of their passing offense outside of Waller, but somebody's going to catch the ball. Somebody's going to have explosive plays. We saw just enough out of Henry Ruggs to be intrigued, not out of a consistent basis at all, but he's going to be on the field a heck of a lot more than he was last year and have a heck of a lot more opportunities. What he does with him, I don't know, but there's definitely a lot of guys going in his range late in the draft that he's got more upside for sure.
Absolutely. And the last tandem we'll cover right here with this strategy is the Jets. You have wide receiver Corey Davis and Jamison Crowder. Tell me what you're feeling about this group.
Well, these are guys that, Davis, they paid a lot of money to. He's going to be I think the Jets could really turn things around. Addition by subtraction by getting rid of Adam Gase, but then actually making some good, risky, not retread hires, but fresh hires. They need fresh blood there. So you've got, a rookie quarterback gunslinger, and, the wide receiver room's kind of up for grabs. There's been a lot of good reports about Elijah Moore, the rookie out of Ole Miss, too. So I would include him in here. But to me, like out the gate, Davis is the one they paid a lot of money to. So he's going to be out there as long as I'm hearing he's got a little banged up in the off season. But that's a guy that's going to be out there. I expect the most out of anybody because they paid him to be out there. And then Jamison Crowder, they brought him back for a reason. They could have cut him loose if they wanted to just forget about him and move on to the next generation. They would have. So he's always been a PPR guy that you can count on when he's out there and healthy, working the slot. But Elijah Moore has got a lot of potential too. Those are the guys. I mean, they've got a sneaky deep core of guys, so I expect them to rotate a lot of guys. But in general, I think if you grab Corey Davis, as the first one, great. But if you don't catch him, even any combination of those guys, just to see how the receiver room sorts out, because I think they're going to come out slinging with, Zach Wilson, see what he's made of. And I don't think they're going to really establish the run a whole lot. Somebody's going to get some fantasy production. We'll see who that is, but it doesn't hurt to just hop on an offense we don't know a whole lot about. There's a lot of slow, just unexciting offenses out there that you could hitch your wagon to or try out something new. This is a whole new team. We've got to wipe our slate clean of what we've thought about the New York Jets for decades, really. But recently, for fantasy success, it's not about, it's about, at the end of the day, production, and that production could definitely be there. We've seen a team I reference a lot is that Jags team in 2015 that was just terrible, but Blake Bortles threw 35 touchdowns because they were always behind. That was Allen Robinson's breakout year. And there was a lot of fantasy production off of a bad team. The Jets should be an improved team, but even if they are, still a bad team, it's just it's a numbers game. That's what fantasy is, and there's going to be numbers up for grabs from this new offense.
Yeah, shout out to Steve, our resident Jets expert. He says Elijah Moore. If you guys weren't going to mention him, I definitely was going to mention him. He's having a great camp so far. And with the new head coach and offensive coordinator, both coming from the San Francisco 49ers, I can definitely see Elijah Moore being utilized similar to the way the 49ers utilized Deebo Samuel. So not only is he going to give you those points as a receiver in the PPR leagues with catches, yards, and touchdowns, but he also adds additional value if he's used in any type of capacity as a running back, taking handoffs, using him in jet sweeps, things of that nature. He's explosive. He's going to make a lot of plays this season. So I'm actually excited to see what this Jets offense will do as well. I have another comment here from Bill Hudson. Thanks so much, Bill. He says, I've got a third round pick, or I have third pick in PPR, also 0.25 per carry. Derrick Henry, Ezekiel Elliott, or Travis Kelce. What do you think? He's at the third overall pick in the PPR with, I'm assuming that's 0.25 points a carry.
Mm-hmm.
Should he go with Derrick Henry, Ezekiel Elliott, or should he go with Travis Kelce? I know you mentioned Kelce. You're looking at him at 3. Would you take Zeke or Derrick Henry over Kelce at 3? Let's help Bill out here.
In this format, I would go Henry because I think, he's just going to get the work. Obviously, Zeke's done it before, but to me, Henry's he's going to get the work. He's going to get the work. Like in a regular PPR league, you might downgrade him a little bit, but that 0.25 per carry, I mean, you gotta give it to the big dog. That's my opinion. What's your take on that?
I don't know. I look at that Titans offense and I look at AJ Brown, going into, I believe, year 3. And, you have Julio Jones coming over. I'm thinking maybe they open it up a little bit more. And you see more passing because in the past they didn't have 2 wide receivers that they could go to. You can look at Jonnu Smith, but more of in the tight end role. He won't command the targets that Julio Jones commands. So you have Julio and AJ on the outsides. Maybe Derrick Henry has less carries. You look at Zeke, Dallas is loaded. They have 3 wide receivers. You look at Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb. They're going to run the ball, but they're also going to throw the ball a lot. Kelce in Kansas City, he's option number 1. Some people flip-flop and say he's option 1 or Tyreek Hill is option 1. Kelce is option number 1 because while Tyreek offers you that deep speed, Kelce also offers you short, intermediate, and deep. He's option number 1. I love Derrick Henry, one of my favorite backs in the league. But in the PPR, I think I go Kelce over Henry and Zeke if I had pick 3. So I think I like your thinking earlier on with taking Kelce somewhere as high as 3. Comment from John Wright Jr. He says, can we talk about Saints wide receivers? Are you targeting anyone as a sleeper?
Yeah, I'll say that, Treikwan Smith is the one that everybody's going to gravitate towards, which is, understandable. He's the one that's been there the longest. They trust him. But in general, he's disappointed when he's had the opportunities. He had his opportunities last year when Thomas was out, and he'd have, he had a couple games. He had one blow-up game, and then another game, he caught a touchdown. But mostly quiet games when he's had the opportunities, even though he's been out on the field, like tremendous snap rates. I know at least one game he played every snap at receiver. So, I mean, he's the name that's going to come off the board first, and I understand it. But I kind of like Marquez Callaway, who was a rookie last year, undrafted that they have. He's kind of the guy I think that he's going to be more consistent. He's going to be more of the Michael Thomas role. I think he's more of a physical guy. I think we've just seen Treikwan get injured year after year after year without being the guy. I don't know how that's going to change. And he is more of a take the lid off type guy. To me, Callaway will be the consistent chain mover, somebody you could rely on. And it's a guy that probably nobody knows about. I think he's a guy that could definitely pay off, at least while Thomas is out. And, we don't know. We saw what happened with Thomas last year. It could be a long haul. So that's who I would target as Callaway, a little bit cheaper than Smith. But I don't mind Smith, but you're just going to have to pay a higher price for him when they're pretty much on an even playing field.
You can let me know if my thinking is a little bit off base here or if I'm thinking, too deep into it. But my biggest concern with any Saints wide receiver outside of Michael Thomas is who's throwing them the ball. Is it Jameis Winston or is it Taysom Hill? Who's going to be the starting quarterback? And honestly, in my estimation, to me, it doesn't matter which one it is. I wouldn't be as confident spending that draft capital on Treikwan Smith with Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston as a starting quarterback as I would if Drew Brees was still the quarterback. If Drew Brees is still the quarterback, I'm a little bit more comfortable spending that draft capital on Treikwan Smith, especially with Michael Thomas being out. But with the quarterback situation in New Orleans, I'm definitely not confident taking anyone outside of Michael Thomas because I don't know if that person is going to be effective throwing them the ball. Is that something that folks should consider when they're looking at Saints wide receivers in this draft?
Definitely. I think you got to be rooting for Jameis to win that because he's gonna be slinging it. Taysom's going to run around, which is fun to watch, and it's good for him if you have him in fantasy. But I think you want to see Jameis win that job to have a more standard operating offense. We saw Taysom run an offense, and I don't know how that's going to change. Like, you got to root for Jameis in this situation. And I'll counter you a little bit with the Drew Brees thing. I would say in a lot of ways I'd feel better about some receivers just because we don't know that Kamara is going to be as heavily involved in the passing game as he was in the past because Brees loved to put it there, kind of like Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers, wherever he was feeding his running backs on passes. Kind of the same with Drew Brees, especially down the road. So I think Jameis could really open up the offense in some ways in terms of the vertical game, which would help a guy like Smith. Taysom plays, and I think Taysom's going to play either way. It's just how much. But in general, yeah, it's a polarizing offense to watch. So many questions, but you got to think you got a really, really smart head coach, and you've got maybe the best offensive line in the league. There's potential in that, and the defense might be taking a step back. The secondary is a little shakier than it was, so there might be the team's not going to be as good. But for fantasy, it could work out. Figuring out who it's going to be is going to be the tough part. But definitely the number one watched QB competition I can think of in the NFL for fantasy and beyond is going to be who wins that job.
Now, when you were talking and we were talking about the Saints, it made me think of this question. And at first I thought it was a silly question and maybe I shouldn't ask it. But then I thought, well, maybe it has some value with what we're talking about with this strategy and teammates and handcuffing. What is your take on handcuffing quarterbacks? Do you take a Jameis Winston and maybe a little bit later grab somebody like Taysom Hill? Do you take a Jimmy Garoppolo and on the off chance that, either he gets injured or somewhere down the line, the 49ers decide to move on, you also take a Trey Lance? What are your thoughts on using this strategy with quarterbacks?
Yeah, I mean, if you're in a league that has super flex or is deep enough, these are definitely guys you got to keep an eye on. I mean, Trey Lance is going to keep creeping up board just because of the upside. He's going to be a guy. But it's kind of the same thing with the Saints. It's like Jameis, I just feel like he's going to stay limited because Taysom, as much as he was involved in their red zone last year, I expected even more this year. So Jameis, I feel like, is going to have a lower ceiling. So, and the same thing, Jimmy G, I think he's a pretty good quarterback. I think he could do fine. He could lead that team to the playoffs. But for fantasy, he has the weapons, sure, but I don't like him as a fantasy quarterback as much. But two guys you got to circle are Trey Lance and Taysom Hill. Lance, first of all, because one way or another, he's going to get on the field, and they want him to succeed. Taysom or Jameis, it's still kind of a toss-up. Overall, the 49ers know their franchise is Trey Lance. They just don't know when. So that's the first guy out of that grouping. But that's a good question because, a lot of people play in a lot of different types of leagues. And you got to watch every quarterback battle because it's going to affect you one way or another. There's not a team in the NFL that it doesn't affect in fantasy who's taking snaps under center. So, but that would be my take there. In dynasty leagues and stuff, you want to own these guys and just see how it shakes out. Whether you trade them or not, you just want to have the pieces.
Absolutely. Let's get to a couple more questions, and then we'll move to the second portion of our show. Another question from John Wright Jr. Thanks so much, John. We appreciate you watching and asking all these questions. He says, is Taylor still a first-round pick knowing the injuries with the guard and QB? I'm assuming he's talking about Jonathan Taylor from the Indianapolis Colts with the injuries that were suffered by Carson Wentz and guard Quentin Nelson. What do you think here?
Yeah, I think Taylor has just dramatically lost value through this. I don't know which is worse for him, but they're both terrible because Quentin Nelson, probably the best guard in the league. And Wentz, he was a good hope to try to open up that offense. If you're putting in essentially, garbage at quarterback, if Jacob Eason is just a complete unknown, unless they trade for somebody that's got some juice or experience or something. I just think Taylor, he's going to be running into a lot of 8-man boxes, and without his best blocker in front of him, he's a guy I think I'd rather take a chance on, like Najee Harris, Antonio Gibson, a lot of these guys that were going more like a mid to late second. So I think Taylor's really slipping to basically a late second round pick. He should get the workload, but he's already got guys behind him that also are going to be involved. And if this offense is quickly falling apart, it's not something that you want a guy that's mainly a first and second down runner to carry your fantasy team in the first round. I can't see it.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. Steve asks another question here. Who is the one player each of you is guaranteeing you draft in every single league? We'll start with you. Who's that one player that no matter what league, you're taking him no matter what?
I am one who really, truly lets the draft come to you. But a guy that I thought I'd have a lot of is Chase Edmonds. We talked about him earlier. Said I'm going to get a tight end early. I just know I am. So I think I'm going to have a lot of Darren Waller if the opportunity's there. I'm higher, I think, on Hawkinson and Pitts. Those are two guys. I'm going to end up with one of those three tight ends in pretty much every league because I'm going to make that a priority. Obviously, if I could get Kelsey, great, but that's a lot dependent on what you have just with that first round pick. Beyond that, I'd have to think for a minute. You got some guys in mind?
Of course I gotta stay home. I gotta stay with the 49ers. I think this is going to be a big year for Brandon Ayuk. It doesn't matter who the quarterback is. So in my wide receiver core, I'm definitely going to, in there somewhere, I'm going to have Brandon Ayuk. If I employ this strategy, then more than likely I'm going to have Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel because I think they can both do a lot. Where Ayuk is going to give me more as far as a receptions type of guy. I think Deebo can do similar things, but he's going to also give me those additional carries on those jet sweeps, lining them up in the backfield, running wide receiver screens, things of that nature. Kyle's going to use a lot of those two guys within his offense. The ball is going to get spread around. We do have Kittle. We do have running backs that we can use. But I'm for sure going to have Brandon Ayuk on my team because I'm expecting big things from him this year. Next question from Lance Mazzini. I hope I said that right. He says, will Montgomery in Chicago do better or worse this year?
I personally think he's going to take a little bit of a step back just because he was pretty much the biggest workhorse running back in the NFL last year. He didn't have anybody behind him. Now you've got, they signed Damian Williams. I think he's going to take a little bit of work from him. If you get anything out of Tariq Cohen coming back, that's a guy that, out the backfield is a real mismatch. So I think his workload's definitely going to go down, and that's going to hurt him for PPR purposes especially. But I do think they could be a more efficient offense whenever they do turn to Justin Fields, just because, it's just a much higher ceiling on the offense when you have a more talented quarterback room. But in general, I think in fantasy, he's going to take a step back.
All right. And the last question that we have here, who has a better season, DeAndre Swift or Antonio Gibson?
Or I see CEH in there as well. So out of the three.
Who's CEH? Remind me.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Okay. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, DeAndre Swift, or Antonio Gibson.
I would rank them right now: Gibson, CEH, and then Swift. I'm a little worried that Gibson's kind of got this gimpy toe thing leading in, so let's make sure he's healthy. If he's healthy out the gate, that's how I'd rank him. I think Clyde is the one with the most overall upside, but also the most downside. And to me, Swift is kind of a third, not super distant, but just a guy that I like Swift a lot. And then the Jamal Williams signing has me kind of thrown off on a what should be maybe, the worst offense in the league. We'll see.
Absolutely. All right. So now this is the good part of the show where we can actually put the strategy to the test. We are going to put the Grimlock Warrior through a mock fantasy draft using the teammates unlocking handcuff strategy. So we're going to do this for the 2021 season. We're going to let's do scoring, PPR, draft type snake, and we can only use opponent pick logic basic. Now, do you want to pick your draft position or do you want to randomize?
Let's just do randomized.
Randomized. We get pick 11.
See what the fantasy. Okay, and that's good to me when I'm trying to do this strategy.
All right, let's get this draft started. Draft is loading up here. So Christian McCaffrey goes 1. Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara. Can we see who else came off the board? Let me see. Okay, so we have Christian McCaffrey 1, Cook 2, Kamara 3, Derrick Henry 4, Kelsey 5, Devontae Adams 6, Saquon Barkley 7, Tyreek Hill 8, Zeke Elliott 9, and Aaron Jones 10. All right, so we're at pick number 11 in the first round. Tell me where you would like to go with this pick here.
I will go with Eckler just because I think it's really important to lock in that running back spot right off the bat.
So let's take a look at the other running backs. We still have Nick Chubb on the board here. We still have Joe Mixon on the board, but you want to go with Austin Eckler?
Yeah, Mixon's a guy that I like as well, and I'm very high on Mixon. But I'm a little concerned about the offense in general. If Joe Burrow's a little gimpy right now, if there's anything wrong with Burrow, that offense is just. I mean, we all know how important the quarterback position is. So let's go Eckler just for the higher floor at this point.
Got it. So we will select Austin Eckler with our first round pick 11. And now we are back on the clock. Let's take a look at the draft board. So after we selected Austin Eckler, Jonathan Taylor came off the board and wide receiver Stephon Diggs. So now we are up at pick 2. Do you want to stay at running back? Do you want to go at another position? Let me know what you're thinking here.
I mean, I like some of the running backs here. Like I said, I like Mixon, but I want a balanced team out with this 12-team league. So let's go with the receiver position here. I know it's a little too early for me to take my guy Waller. So let's check out the receiver position. And to me, there's a clear top 2 there with Hopkins and Ridley. I think Hopkins is, gosh, he's been so good, but to me, Ridley has the highest ceiling here. So let's go with Ridley.
All right, Calvin Ridley with our second pick, number 2 overall in the second round. All right, we've got Austin Eckler and Calvin Ridley so far. Oh, your guy Darren Waller comes off the board. We'll check that out on the draft board really quickly. So after we select Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins comes off the board at pick number 3 in the second round. Then Nick Chubb at 4, Pat Mahomes at 5, Najee Harris at 6, Antonio Gibson at 7, Metcalf at 8, Joe Mixon at 9, and your boy Darren Waller, 10th overall pick in the second round. CEH at 11, Justin Jefferson at 12. And here's who came off the board in the third round: Allen Robinson, AJ Brown, DeAndre Swift, Keenan Allen, Terry McLaurin, my guy George Kittle, Josh Allen, CeeDee Lamb, Robert Woods, and DJ Moore. So let me know where's your head at? What you thinking right now?
Well, I'm looking. There was a big run on receivers there, and this is a big part where you see what the team that's picking after you is doing, because they're getting 2 in a row. Both our teams started with running backs and receivers, so it's, we have similar spots there. But I want to keep hammering either running back or receiver. I think one way or another, I'm probably balancing it out. But let's see which running backs are there first, because that's just the position that goes quickest. So out of these guys, to me, Chris Carson just offers so much in terms of, he brings it in the receiving game. He's their focus in the run game. He's got my eye, but I'm also okay with Dobbins, and Montgomery and Sanders are both good as well. But ideally, Carson and Dobbins are the guys I'm looking at here. Let's take a look at receivers.
All right, we've got Amari Cooper, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Julio Jones.
Okay. Can you expand off of that a little bit? Are there other guys? I'm just curious.
After that, we've got Cooper Kupp, Deontay Johnson, Tyler Lockett is still available.
Okay.
Adam Thielen, Kenny Golladay with the Giants, T. Higgins. Oh, Brandon Ayuk is still there. Just throwing that out there.
I got
Juju. He's still available. OBJ is still available. Cortland Sutton with the Denver Broncos coming back off injury, still available. Jamar Chase, the rookie. Robbie Anderson in Carolina. We got a lot of guys. Chase Claypool still available. You got your pick of the litter here, man. You thinking wide receiver, or you want to go back to running backs and expand that out a little bit?
Let's do running backs. Let's go with Chris Carson. I think that's just a guy. He's in a workhorse role on a good offense. I just think there's not many questions with him.
Absolutely. And even with the weapons that they have at wide receiver with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, one of the gripes about Russell Wilson and this Seattle Seahawks offense under Pete Carroll is that maybe they run the ball a little bit too much. They're too old school. They're too ground and pound. So that is beneficial for somebody like Chris Carson. He's going to get the touches. He's going to get the carries. So we're going to go with Chris Carson here. I like the pick. And then Miles Sanders and Amari Cooper come off the board.
Okay.
So I know you said you want to keep it balanced. Did you want to get another running back? Did you want to hop back over at receiver? Did you want to grab your tight end now? What you thinking?
I mean, Cooper was the guy I was looking at. Yeah, gosh, this is where it gets tricky. I mean, ideally, I'm thinking Dobbins, but I'm also concerned. This is going against. This is this is not going to be good for a teammate strategy for the running back side. So we're going to have to look at receivers that way. But let's take Dobbins just because those it's just deep after this. And I think Dobbins is a guy that he might not have a huge pass catching role, but the main running back next to Lamar Jackson has just eaten. And I think, he's got his way paved for a really nice floor to go on top with a high ceiling.
All right. We're going to go with J.K. Dobbins here in the 4th round.
So with this specific draft, it's ruling out to me that we're probably not going to get a very top end teammate trading on running back, but it could come back into play with receivers here. That's for sure.
Okay, let's take a look. Since we had a lot of guys go, Tyler Lockett, Deontay Johnson, David Montgomery, the Buccaneers wide receivers back-to-back off the board. Josh Jacobs, Kyler Murray's gone. Julio Jones, Kyle Pitts, and Cooper Kupp to round out the 4th round. And then through the 5th round, Travis Etienne, Michael Thomas, Adam Thielen, Kenny Golladay, Myles Gaskin, Cortland Sutton, Jamar Chase, tight end Mark Andrews, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Mike Davis. So we're back on the clock in the 5th round with the 11th overall pick. Let me know what you're thinking, what your thoughts are.
Well, I want to look at receivers first. I have a feeling see, this is just a deeper position. Like those top 3 guys are who I have my eye on. Would be Higgins, Ayuk, Beckham. But I'm really thinking those are guys that I'll look at either on the way back. But this is where I want to take a top end tight end or quarterback when I can. So let's take a look at this is I know I'm going to need receivers, looking at it, but let's take a look at those other positions because I gotta lock in at least one elite. So for me,
your guy's here.
There is, and there's just a big drop off to me after him. So I feel like he's pretty close to a much take. But let's take a look at quarterback because.
Ooh.
Yeah. Now this is where it's just too tempting for me to pair up Lamar and J.K. Dobbins. They're gonna run the ball. They're gonna be in the end zone a lot. I got to do it. I got to take Lamar Jackson. To me, it's a lot of people want to add Dak Prescott to the elite quarterbacks as a top 5. I want to make sure his leg's okay, man. I was watching that game live, and I don't doubt that he's coming back healthy and everything. But if he's just not going to run like he did, that was a huge part of what he did. He can still air it out, but there's a lot of pocket quarterbacks in the league. If you take away the fact that he was constantly running for 6+ touchdowns a year, take that away, that's a huge part of his fantasy game. So for me, Lamar Jackson's my number 2 quarterback. I love Josh Allen. I love Kyler Murray. I love what they bring to the table. But to me, Lamar Jackson consistently going as the 4th quarterback. He probably has the highest floor of, Patrick Mahomes is incredible. But the things that Lamar Jackson does, back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing years, you can't, it's unheard of. I mean, so to pair him up with J.K. Dobbins, it's too good to pass up for me.
Absolutely. So we're going to snag him right here. 5th round, pick 11. We get Lamar Jackson. And maybe, just maybe, your guy will still be on the board. And he is.
Okay.
He's still here.
So that's who I want. But let's look at receivers because this is the tough part.
Okay. Still got T. Higgins, Brandon Ayuk, Chase Claypool, Robbie Anderson. Only receiver that was taken since our last pick was Odell Beckham Jr. And we can even expand this. Tyler Boyd, DJ Chark, Jerry Jeudy, Brandon Cooks, Debo, Will Fuller, Jarvis Landry.
So as much as it's going to sting me to pass up on some of these guys, I've got to take Hawkinson. And this is not something, a lot of people, you don't want to take a quarterback or a tight end too high and stuff. To me, if you can lock in my opinion, I'm locking in a top, like I said, Lamar is my number 2 quarterback, but I'm locking in a top 4 quarterback. And again, according to the draft, Hawkinson to me is the 4th tight end, but here he is the 6th available. You got to take him and just let the draft come to you. If there's a deep enough position out there to make up for it, it's receiver. So we've got one stud receiver, and we're going to load up after this. So let's take Hawkinson and see how it goes. That's what this is all about, is exercise of the game. So
absolutely. So we take Hawkinson at the top of the 6th round. Some of those wide receivers are coming off the board now.
Yeah, it's not going to be necessarily the prettiest thing, but we're going to make it work at receiver.
Absolutely.
We've already got our stud in place. So,
all right, 7th round, pick 11. Let's go back to wide receiver, see what we have. Brandon Cooks, Will Fuller, Laviska Shenault, Jarvis Landry, Antonio Brown, Corey Davis. We talked about the Jets earlier. Mike Williams, receiver I really, really like in Los Angeles.
I do too.
Michael Gallup, Devontae Parker, Michael Pittman Jr., although I don't know how high he's going to be with the injury to Carson Wentz.
Yep.
Marvin Jones, Jalen Waddle there, Marquise Brown. Do we want to make this 3 for 3 with Baltimore?
No, I think I'm going to pass on that part of it. So the guys I'm looking at here are these top 2 guys. And to me, Brandon Cooks, he seems like he's going to be in place for a lot of work. But at the same time, to me, I look at Will Fuller. When he's out there and healthy, he's just so freaking good. There's a lot of questions with the Texans passing game. For now, the tiebreaker to me is going to be Fuller, that he's been productive his whole life, and I'm expecting Tua to take a step up. So let's take Fuller. It's a risky pick, but we're going to load up at this receiver group the rest of the draft. So why not just go at it here? But let's start with Fuller and see who makes it back to us.
All right. Now I'm gonna take Fuller here. But just to play devil's advocate, one, when you look at Will Fuller over his career and his inconsistency to stay on the field, how much does that weigh in? And yes, I do believe Tua will take a step up. But when you look at the weapons, you look at Devontae Parker, who is going to be wide receiver number 1. You got Jalen Waddle, who they drafted, number 6 overall. They have tight end Mike Gesicki. They drafted another tight end out of Boston College, Hunter Long. You know, when you factor in his health and then the amount of weapons that he has, next to him in that, skill position group, does either one of those things enter your thought process when you're debating whether to go Cooks over Fuller? And which one to you? Obviously, we're going with Fuller, but what do you have to outweigh when you look at, one, who's going to be throwing the ball to Brandon Cooks versus Will Fuller's health and the amount of talent that is around him?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and tell you my thought process on part of this teammate strategy is ideally on not the next pick, but on the way back, I'm hoping that either Parker or Waddle falls to me, because I am worried about Fuller's health. But to me, Fuller is just a much better receiver than Devonta Parker. And at this point, Waddle, we just haven't seen it yet. And that's, to me, they're more linked together. I think we saw Parker, Parker didn't seem to click with Tua like he did with Fitzpatrick previously. But either way, like, my thought process is you take Fuller, we'll take another receiver at this next pick, and then on the way back after that, I'm hoping to get another Dolphins receiver as a potential teammate strategy with that.
I hope you guys watching are paying attention and taking notes. This is exactly why we wanted to go through this mock draft, so you can see it happen in real time and what it might look like when you go through your fantasy football draft. So we're going to take Will Fuller here, and hopefully Jalen Waddle or Devontae Parker. Like you said, we can snag those guys, on the back end.
Ooh, so
all right.
Cook is gone.
Yep, Cooks is gone. He went right after Will Fuller. I feel like if you took Cooks, maybe Fuller would have been gone after that. But we took Fuller. Cooks and Antonio Brown are off the board, so it looks like we're having a run on receivers here.
Okay.
Do you want to go another receiver with this pick at the top of the 8th round, or do you want to go to another position?
Do I want to? Not necessarily, but do I have to? Yes.
Okay.
So
okay.
this is where I jumped in on running back, and I jumped in to get my quarterback and tight end out of the way. So I feel like I have to take a receiver. So Jarvis Landry is just not a sexy receiver, but that's a guy that is gonna catch 75 plus passes. It's just write it down. It's gonna happen. So let's scroll a little bit. Right now, that feels like the guy I have to take to be the anti-Fuller, the guy that's going to be out there, going to get you PPR points. But so we've got Parker down there. I think him or Waddle will make it back to us. So
Corey Davis, Mike Williams, Michael Gallup, Devontae Parker, Jalen Waddle, Marquise Brown. Let's see if we can add a couple more names. Darnell Mooney from Chicago. T.Y. Hilton, another Indy receiver who's probably losing some draft stock. Mecole Hardman from Kansas City. Cole Beasley from Buffalo. Jalen Reagor in Philly.
It's getting ugly.
Henry Ruggs with the Raiders. Yeah, starting to get a little sketchy down at the bottom of this list.
All right, so here's what I don't want to do. I don't want to just feel like I have to take that Dolphins receiver just to take him. So the two guys that I'm thinking about are Jarvis and Laviska. Now, Jarvis, like I said, it's not a pretty pick at all. You're just doing it, and you're putting him in your PPR points. Laviska is more of an unknown, but he's got the talent, and he's on an ascending offense. So here's my thought process on taking Laviska. Is if I can snag, and I saw him creeping in on there, let's say the Dolphins guys don't go. Another teammate strategy to me is to get 2 out of the 3 Jaguars receivers, because I think they're going to be slinging the rock. I think they're not going to have a choice, but Trevor Lawrence is going to have to throw it. Their defense still isn't very good. They're just going to have to do it. So I'm torn on this, but I want to win the fantasy league. I don't want to necessarily just, make some noise. So let's take Shenault. And like I said, maybe the next round I'm taking Marvin Jones and Jalen Waddle. And then we have pieces of multiple offense. And, they all could be valuable at some point. But this is a perfect example of the teammate strategy of getting chunks of an offense and leather.
All right, so we'll take Laviska Shenault right here with our second overall pick in the 8th round. And Jarvis Landry comes off the board.
Oh, yeah. Jarvis is a good football player. He just is. But that offense, I mean, I thought he would have a better year once Odell was hurt last year. But
right. So after Laviska Shenault, we had a lot of players off the board. Let's just read them off real quick. Damian Harris, Jarvis Landry, Chase Edmonds, James Robinson, Javonte Williams, Raheem Mostert, Michael Pittman, Melvin Gordon, Mike Williams, Leonard Fournette. And then the top of the 9th round, Marvin Jones, Michael Carter, Marquise Brown, Michael Gallup, Joe Burrow, Ronald Jones, Jalen Waddle off the board, Trey Sermon, Corey Davis, and Tariq Cohen.
So with my strategy here, one of the 3 players fell, and that was the key. So to me, I got to take Parker just to kind of lock in that passing game. And then after that, we can, if we want to kind of veer away from receiver, we'll see who else is there. I do like Darnell Mooney a lot. That's a guy that I could see myself taking a lot more of. But let's start with Parker, and then we'll regroup, see if we want some running backs.
All right. We take Devontae Parker, Cole Beasley, and Nyheim Hines come off the board. And now we are back on the clock, top of the 10th round, pick number 2.
Okay. Out of these receivers, just looking at them real quick, to me, it's Mooney and it's Hardman. Those are guys standing up. I know we talked about Ruggs. We might be able to get some Raiders later on for cheap. But to me, those are the 2 high upside guys. Russell Gage is a little intriguing. But in general, I think we've kind of filled in that receiver spot where we don't have to take another one. We still need the depth. We're still, I would say, still out of my next 3 picks, 2 of them need to be receivers just to completely lock that in. But let's take a look at running backs to see what we got available.
All right, top 4: David Johnson, Zach Moss, James Conner, and Kenyon Drake.
Okay.
You can add Jamal Williams to that list, Devin Singletary to that list. And that was one of your teammate strategies. We got Moss and Singletary sitting right there. Something to think about.
Yep.
A.J. Dillon, J.D. McKissick, Latavius Murray, and Gus Edwards. Another teammate strategy since you took J.K. Dobbins earlier. I know you got the QB / running back in Lamar Jackson, but do you like any names on this list? Did you want to lock in another running back?
Yeah, I think I am, just because nobody's really jumping out. Mooney's the guy that I like out of the receivers, but I mean, David Johnson, I can't bring myself around to do it. Let's take Zach Moss, because to me, the upside is there. I think he's going to get a lot more work than he got last year. I don't think Singletary is going to make it back to us, but he could. But let's take Moss and obviously hope for Singletary to fall. I don't necessarily know what's going to happen, but let's do it. And like I said, we're going to have to go back to the well on receivers a couple more times. But for now, I mean, that's locking in some serious running back work.
All right, we'll take Zach Moss here. Let's see who comes off the board. Mooney's gone. Singletary is also gone. Uh-oh.
That's all right.
Now we got to see what we can do. Let's take a look. So Robert Tonyan, David Johnson, Henry Ruggs, Dallas Goedert, our guy Darnell Mooney, who we just talked about, Kenyon Drake, Logan Thomas. Starting to see some defenses coming off the board. Rams and Steelers. Then Jamal Williams. We got Steve's guy, Elijah Moore, first pick in round 11. Then Mecole Hardman, T.Y. Hilton, James Conner, Jalen Reagor, Tony Pollard, A.J. Dillon, Devin Singletary, Noah Fant, and Jamison Crowder.
Gosh, that Singletary pick really crept in there.
Yeah, it did.
So let's take a look at receivers. I think I'm going to want to take Gus Edwards just to lock up that backfield, but let's see which receivers we want to fall. So we've got Gage, Treikwan. We talked about him.
We talked about him earlier.
Bateman is an interesting pick because he could right off the bat come in there and start. Then you've got the Marquise Brown injury that was recent. I mean, that's an intriguing player for sure. John Brown, I talked about him earlier. I liked him a little more before these latest reports came out. But, yeah, I'm seeing out of these receivers, the guys jumping out to me are Gage, Treikwan, and then Bateman. But none of them are jumping out to me like Gus Edwards to pair him with J.K. Dobbins. So, to me, that's the pick. And then we'll go back to the well at receiver.
All right. Gus Edwards. Round 11, pick 11. And then we head over to round 12, pick 2. And then we'll go back over to the wide receiver. Gage, Bateman, Treikwan still here. Sterling Shepard, Nelson Aguilar, John Brown, Christian Kirk, Gabriel Davis, Rondell Moore, Paris Campbell, Emmanuel Sanders, Rashad Perryman.
So I think out of all these guys, the guy with the most upside is going to be Treikwan Smith, at least for this first half of the season without Michael Thomas. So to me, that's a guy you can take. He's got the upside. Like I said, there's some questions, but this is where throw that teammate strategy in there. His name hasn't come up yet, and he's not. He's more of a deeper league guy, but if you take him and Marquez Callaway, his teammate, to me, there's nobody. Everybody else there is kind of just an extra part of the team. They're not going to be out there any kind of focus of the offense. So let's take Treikwan, and said we'll see what we're looking like. We're about to wrap this up, I'm sure. How many rounds are we going?
Let me see. Let's take a look at the draft board. 15 rounds. Okay. So we're at round 13, pick 11. And then we have round 14, pick 2, and round 15, pick 11. So we have 3 more picks left in this draft. And just for the purposes, let's take a look at who we have so far. So we have Lamar Jackson at quarterback, Austin Eckler at running back, Chris Carson at running back. Our wide receivers starting right now are Calvin Ridley, Will Fuller, and Laviska Shenault. Tight end TJ Hawkinson. And then on our bench, we have J.K. Dobbins and Devontae Parker.
So what I'm thinking here, to me, you always take a defense and a kicker. If somebody's really jumping out at you, you want to take them early, that's okay. I'm going to use them as the last 2 picks. So
okay,
for this pick, to me, it makes sense to take Rashard Bateman. I mean, you look, we got the running backs position locked in. Receiver's still the one with the most questions. So Marquez Callaway's a guy I like, but you can get him off waivers if you need to. He's not going to get picked at this point. So Bateman's a guy with a lot of upside. He's tied to our quarterback right now, Lamar Jackson. We're just going to keep getting pieces of this offense we like, and he's got a lot of upside. This is a guy that next year could be a much higher pick. And if there's anything to be learned with these rookie wide receivers, I learned the hard way with Justin Jefferson. I dropped him after week. God, I like to block it out of my memory. I think I dropped him week 2 after he went from yeah. And because I was like, oh, I'm set at receiver. Well, I was set at receiver, but that didn't mean I picked up the right running back when I dropped Justin Jefferson after 2 quiet weeks, because the rest is literally history as he broke rookie receiving records. So when you take a guy like Bateman, you want to give him a chance, but let's draft him. Let's hold him. Let's learn from last year. That's what I'm trying to do. So we take Bateman here, and he's going to give us some upside to this receiver position that we're the thinnest at.
Absolutely. We'll take Rashad Bateman here, and then we will be right back on the clock. 4th round, pick 2. You said you wanted to fill out your defense and your kicker. Let's go to kicker first.
Yeah.
We got Tucker. We got Harrison Butker, Young Ho Koo, Greg Zuerlein. Let's see what we have for defense. Colts defense. Oh, I see a no-brainer pick here. But we have the Colts, the Patriots, the Bills. Let's see who else. Kansas City defense is still here. New Orleans defense. Miami.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and say the Colts defense. This hasn't been adjusted for the fact that they lost their quarterback and best O-lineman. Colts are toast. So to me, it's looking like the Niners or the Patriots. But I'm asking a Niners fan, but you know who y'all play week 1?
Detroit.
That's a no-brainer to me. You got to play matchups in fantasy football. Take the 49ers defense against Jared Goff on a team with essentially no wide receivers. Just makes sense, Has nothing to do with the T-shirt. Has to do with fantasy. But you know what? If it makes you happy at the same time, why not?
All right. I knew I liked you. There we go. Throw those 49ers in there. Great defense. We got Nick Bosa coming back. Our defensive line is stacked. Linebackers is stacked. The secondary is not going to need to do much because that pass rush is going to get home. Oh, and we love playing against Jared Goff. And now he's on a worse team. Oh, we're going to have fun week 1. Absolutely. All right, last pick. We are round 15, second to the last pick, number 11 in this round. We want to fill out the kicker spot. Hey, I see another no-brainer, but I'm not going to force it on you. I'm not going to force this one on you. We got Robbie Gould, Ryan Suckup, Michael Badgley, Mason Crosby.
Hey,
let's see.
Let's go all in.
See?
Let's go all in on this matchup. It's a game of matchups. This is a no-brainer. You got a high-powered offense against maybe the worst team in football.
What is one of the most famous lines in Step Bro? Did we just become best friends? Yep, we absolutely did. Give me Robbie Gould. Let's wrap this up. I love it. I absolutely love it. So
yeah, they don't love it, but that's okay.
They don't like it.
Grade. Yeah.
So they gave you a 76 out of 100. Okay. They gave you a 76 out of 100. So that's a C. I mean, 76 that's a high C. I don't agree with them. I don't agree with the consensus grade. Let's see what some of the Fantasy Pro experts did. One person gave you an A+ for this draft. They gave you a 91 out of 100. This guy gave you a C+, 78. This guy, he's a hater. He gave you a D+. And then you got a C- here. There's always one hater in the group. But grades aside, let's take a look at, what you got. So our starters look like Lamar Jackson, Austin Eckler, Chris Carson at the running back positions. Wide receiver, we have Calvin Ridley, Will Fuller, and Laviska Shenault. Tight end, we have TJ Hockenson. And defense, we have San Francisco 49ers. Kicker, we have Robbie Gould. On our bench, we use the teammate strategy to grab J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. We use the teammate strategy to grab Devontae Parker with Will Fuller. We've got Zach Moss also on our bench, and then wide receivers Treikwan Smith and Rashad Bateman. So going into week one with this roster, how confident are you? Where do you have some reservations? What changes might you make on the waiver wire if you see another player, who's ascending or has a great matchup?
Well, I'll say, first of all, we're definitely going to go with Dan Harris's A- here, right? Like, I mean, come on. Like, that's
absolutely.
That's my teammate strategy right there. That's our third teammate right there. But looking back at it, I'll be honest. I thought we had a flex position, so that's why I would have taken the third. That's why I took 3 running backs in the first 4. So that's just a little. That's just my bad for not catching that. So, but I know that's affecting the grade. But I'm always the guy that's going to come out and get running backs first if I can help it. Just because receiver position. I mean, you see the guys we were able to stack up later. So, do I wish the receiver position was better? Sure. But I know that I went out going for those running backs, and those are the difference makers in fantasy. And I know that I locked in. A lot of people don't have the opportunity to lock in top 5 quarterback and tight end, and we were able to do that while stacking running backs. Receiver position is just so deep. If you're going to wait on a position, to me, it's receiver or it's quarterback. And we went out of our way to get Lamar Jackson here, and that guy's the difference maker. So as long as he's a difference maker and we've got a stable running backs, I've got, in my opinion, a safe tight end in PPR, and the receivers are going to work themselves out. That's a position, that's who we'll be looking at on the waiver wire is seeing if there's a receiver out there. That's the first position looking at, but everything else is stacked. So I feel good about everything else. Dan Harris feels good about everything else. The rest of the guys, they can kick rocks.
Absolutely. That is going to wrap it up for this edition of Strategy Sessions. I want to thank Grimlock Warrior for coming on and being the first episode of this series. Thank you for your expertise. I think you have given a lot of great pointers. You were able to put this strategy into action and give folks a look at what could really happen in their drafts. I think the biggest one we saw was with Zach Moss and not being able to grab Devin Singletary later on. We grabbed Will Fuller And then Jalen Waddle went off the board, but thankfully Devontae Parker was still there. So we got some great examples of this strategy in the works. Any final thoughts before we head out this evening?
No, just learn from your mistakes. I try to do that every year. I put a lot of time and effort into this, but you got to constantly be learning and know that I like to think I'm one of the smartest people at this, but then you have one of those years, like there's so much luck involved in it too, but you got to just pay attention. You got to hit those waivers hard. But the draft can really, they say you don't win it all in the draft, but you can lose it all. So, try to do some risk management there. That's what the teammate strategy helps out. And when you hit on that, you win championships. You find Devonta Freeman before he blows up. You find Alvin Kamara before they blow up. That's what wins me championships. That's what'll win anybody championships.
Absolutely. Thank you for everybody who tuned in. Thank you for everybody who added comments. The engagement was up tonight, and we really, really appreciate that. Again, you can give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and now on our newly created YouTube. This broadcast is streaming live on Facebook and YouTube. We're getting the YouTube page off the ground and running. More content will be coming soon. So give us a subscription over on YouTube and hit that bell notification so that you get notified every time new content drops at FantasyHolics. Be on the lookout for episode 2 of strategy sessions coming sometime next week. And again, love and appreciate everybody. Take some of these gems. I hope you guys were taking notes because it's going to help you be successful on your fantasy teams this year. And we are going to head out and we're going to end how we started. Y'all take it easy.